I'll never forget the look on my grandfather's face that Christmas evening. The dining room was warm with laughter and the smell of roasted turkey, everyone raising their glasses in celebration. Then Grandpa Henry cleared his throat, looked straight at me with those cold blue eyes, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Still living in that house I bought you, Sarah." The room went silent. My wine glass trembled in my hand. Because what nobody else at that table knew was that I had discovered the truth just 3 days earlier. That house wasn't a gift. It was a trap. And the man I'd called Grandpa for 32 years had been playing me like a puppet from the very beginning. But let me back up, because this story doesn't start at Christmas dinner. It starts 6 months earlier, when I thought I was finally winning at life. Before we dive deeper into what happened, if you love stories about justice, revenge, and people who refuse to stay down when life knocks them flat, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and join the Revenge Unleashed family. Drop a like if you're ready for a wild ride, and comment below about a time someone underestimated you. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this one ends. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and for most of my adult life, I thought I was the lucky one in my family. While my cousins struggled with rent and student loans, I lived in a beautiful 4-bedroom house in suburban Connecticut. Grandpa Henry had given it to me when I turned 25, saying he wanted to see me settled and happy. "You're special, Sarah," he told me with that warm smile. "You deserve this." I cried tears of gratitude that day. I worked as a teacher, making decent money but nothing that would ever afford me a home like that. I felt blessed beyond measure. My cousins, Rachel and Tom, always seemed a bit cold toward me after that. I figured it was jealousy, and I tried not to rub it in. I invited them over for holidays, tried to be generous, but there was always this distance. My brother Jake barely spoke to me anymore. At family gatherings, I'd catch them whispering, shooting looks my way. It hurt, but I told myself that Grandpa had chosen to help me, and that wasn't my fault. He was a self-made billionaire who'd built a tech company from nothing in the 1980s. He could do whatever he wanted with his money. Then came last June. I was cleaning out the basement, something I'd been putting off for years, when I found an old filing cabinet that had come with the house. Most of it was junk, but at the very back was a manila folder with my name on it. Inside were documents. Mortgage documents. Loan agreements. Payment schedules. My hand started shaking as I read through page after page. The house hadn't been a gift at all. Grandpa Henry had put it in my name, yes, but he'd also taken out a massive mortgage against it without telling me. He'd been making the payments himself, which is why I never knew. But according to these papers, I was legally responsible for a loan of $1.2 million. The house was worth maybe $600,000. I was underwater by more than $500,000, and I'd had no idea. I sat on that basement floor for 2 hours, reading and rereading the documents, trying to understand. Why would he do this? Then I found the letter, tucked into the very back of the folder. It was in Grandpa's handwriting, dated the month he'd given me the house. It was addressed to his lawyer, and someone had clearly filed a copy by mistake. "Proceed with the Sarah plan as discussed," it read. "The debt will ensure she remains dependent and grateful. When the time comes for the estate division, her share will be reduced to account for the house gift, which the others don't need to know is worthless. This keeps her close and manageable while appearing generous. She's always been the emotional one, easy to manipulate with sentiment." I threw up right there on the basement floor. Then I cried until I couldn't breathe. The man I'd loved and trusted my entire life had set me up. He'd made me look like the spoiled favorite while actually saddling me with debt that would destroy me financially. And he'd planned to use it to control me, to make me grateful and dependent, while cutting me out of my real inheritance. The worst part? I'd let it work. I'd been so grateful, so eager to please him, always the first to visit, the one who called every week, who brought him soup when he was sick. I distanced myself from my siblings and cousins because I thought they were jealous. When really, what if they'd known something I hadn't? What if they'd been angry on my behalf? I spent the next 3 days in a fog, going to work on autopilot, coming home and staring at those documents. I wanted to confront him immediately, to scream and demand answers. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the teacher in me, the part that knows you don't walk into a test unprepared. If Grandpa Henry had taught me anything, it was that power comes from information and patience. He'd played a long game with me. It was time I learned to do the same. I started digging. I made copies of everything and took them to a lawyer friend, swearing her to secrecy. She was horrified. "Sarah, this is financial abuse," she told me. "He's committed fraud. You could press charges." But I knew that wasn't the answer. Grandpa Henry had lawyers who made my friend look like a law student. A legal battle would take years and cost money I didn't have. No, I needed something else. I needed to beat him at his own game. I spent weeks researching, learning everything I could about his business, his assets, his relationships. I talked to old colleagues of his, played the devoted granddaughter, asked innocent questions about the old days. I discovered that Grandpa's company was planning to go public again after years of being private. The IPO was set for January, and it would make him even wealthier, but it also meant increased scrutiny and paperwork. Everything would have to be disclosed. That's when the plan started forming. I reached out to Rachel and Tom separately, tentatively at first. "Can we talk?" I asked each of them. I think Grandpa might have lied to all of us. Their responses were cautious but interested. We met at a coffee shop 2 towns over, where nobody would recognize us. When I showed them the documents, Rachel started crying. Tom's face went red with anger. "We knew something was off," Rachel said. "He always played us against each other. He'd tell me you were his favorite, tell Tom that you were ungrateful, tell you that we were jealous. He kept us all separated." "I found something too," Tom admitted. He pulled out his phone and showed me emails. Grandpa had promised to invest in Tom's startup 3 years ago, then pulled out at the last minute, causing it to fail. But the emails showed it had been deliberate sabotage, not the market conditions Grandpa had claimed. He'd wanted Tom to fail, to stay dependent on the family money. We started comparing notes, and a picture emerged of a cruel, calculating man who'd spent decades manipulating his own family for sport and control. We weren't the lucky ones or the unlucky ones. We were all just pieces on his chessboard. "So what do we do?" Rachel asked. I smiled for the first time in weeks. We flipped the board. The plan was delicate and required perfect timing. First, I played the devoted granddaughter even harder than before. I called Grandpa more, visited more, gushed about how grateful I was. I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. His plan was working perfectly, he thought. Meanwhile, Tom used his tech skills to dig deeper into Grandpa's business dealings. What we found was shocking. The company's IPO paperwork was full of irregularities. Assets were overvalued, debts were hidden, and there were related party transactions that hadn't been properly disclosed. Nothing technically illegal on its own, but together. It painted a picture of a company that was far less valuable than it appeared. Rachel, who worked in finance, helped us understand the implications. If this information came out before the IPO, it would tank the offering, she explained. He'd lose hundreds of millions in valuation. Maybe the whole thing would be cancelled. But we can't just leak it, I said. He'd know it was us. He'd retaliate. I thought of those documents in my name, how easily he could destroy me financially if he wanted to. That's when Tom had the brilliant idea. We don't leak it ourselves. We make sure the right people start asking the right questions. Anonymously. Over the next few months, we carefully fed information to financial journalists, to SEC investigators, to market analysts. Nothing traceable, nothing direct. Just breadcrumbs that led them to ask questions. Tom set up untraceable email accounts. Rachel used her industry contacts, playing curious and naive. I kept Grandpa distracted, visiting him weekly, letting him feel powerful and in control. By December, the pressure was building. Articles started appearing questioning the IPO. Investors were getting nervous. Grandpa was stressed, I could see it, but he still had no idea where the leaks were coming from. He suspected business rivals, former employees, anyone but his own family. Then came Christmas dinner. We all gathered at his mansion like we did every year. The table was set with fine china, the chandelier sparkled overhead. Grandpa sat at the head in his expensive suit, playing the generous patriarch. He asked Tom about his job search with fake sympathy. He complimented Rachel's dress while mentioning she'd gained weight. And then he turned to me with that loaded question. Still living in that house I bought you, Sarah? I set down my wine glass carefully. My hands were steady now. Actually, Grandpa, I wanted to talk to you about that. I found some interesting paperwork in the basement. About the mortgage. The one in my name that I never signed for. The room froze. Grandpa's smile didn't waver, but his eyes went hard. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, I said softly. The $1.2 million loan. The one you took out against the house you supposedly gave me as a gift. The one you've been using to control me. You ungrateful, he started, but Tom cut him off. And the investment you promised me. The one you sabotaged deliberately. Tom's voice was cold. Rachel added, we know everything, Grandpa. All of it. Every manipulation, every lie, every game. Grandpa looked around the table at the rest of the family, his other children and grandchildren, trying to find allies. But we talked to them too over the past weeks, shared what we'd found. The room was silent but not with confusion. With condemnation. You have no proof of anything, Grandpa said, but his voice had lost its power. Actually, I said, we have lots of proof. Enough that we've already given it to our lawyers. You're going to transfer the house into my name, clear of all debt, with proper documentation. You're going to pay Tom what you owe him for destroying his business, with interest. And you're going to split your estate equally among all your grandchildren, in writing, with an independent trustee. And if I don't? His face was purple now. I leaned forward. Then every financial journalist in New York gets a very detailed package about your company's IPO irregularities. From multiple sources. Untraceable sources. Your IPO will die, your reputation will be destroyed, and you'll spend your final years fighting investigations instead of counting your billions. The silence stretched out. I could hear the clock ticking on the mantel, someone's nervous breathing. Finally, Grandpa spoke, and his voice was different. Smaller. You wouldn't. Try me, I said. I learned from the best. You taught me that power comes from patience and information. Thank you for that lesson. It took 3 weeks, but he did it. Every demand we'd made, he met. The house became mine, truly mine, with papers that proved it. Tom got a check that let him start over. The estate was restructured fairly. Grandpa tried to salvage his relationship with us, of course. He called it a misunderstanding, said he'd only been trying to teach us to be strong and independent. But we were done being manipulated. The IPO went forward eventually, though at a lower valuation after all the scrutiny. Grandpa Henry is still wealthy beyond imagination. But he's alone now. His children and grandchildren see him at obligatory events, but the warmth is gone. He tried to build an empire by controlling everyone around him, and in the end, he lost the only thing money can't buy, family who actually loves you. I still live in that house, but now when I walk through the door, I don't feel grateful to Grandpa. I feel proud of myself. Proud that I didn't let betrayal destroy me. Proud that I learned to fight back, smartly and carefully. Proud that I helped my cousins escape his games too. The greatest revenge isn't always loud or violent. Sometimes it's quiet, strategic, and leaves your opponent with exactly what they deserve, the consequences of their own cruelty. Grandpa Henry wanted to control me with a house. Instead, he gave me the motivation to take control of my own life. And that Christmas dinner? That was just the beginning of understanding who I really am. Not the grateful, naive granddaughter he created. But someone stronger. Someone who won't be played ever again.